Hello everybody. I see everybody's watching my leaf making videos a lot, so I thought I'd go into this in depth. Another question I get a lot on the comments is what wire I'm using, and there's the wire right in front of you right there. It's 1.4 millimeter diameter or 17 gauge. It's aluminum electric fence wire. I've tried a lot of different wires making trees in the I think 27 years now I've been doing it, and this stuff seems pretty bulletproof. It just seems the best for me. If somebody finds a better wire for making trees, please let me know about it. I think I might try some new wires now. I'm kind of hesitant to do that because I spend a lot of hours making a tree, and if I get halfway through and find out, oh, this wire's not so good, or it's got a bunch of weak spots in it, I can waste a lot of hours. But so there's the wire. And let me get a chunk of the wire here. Okay, this is my current version of the leaf twisting tool, and we're going to try and get it in there and get this thing to focus real good. The tips you see there are a little less than a millimeter in diameter. It's made from a #1 slotted screwdriver bit. Almost all the screwdriver bits they make now are out of hardened steel, and you can see on that one it's real hard, but there's no sharp edges on the prongs. If you end up with sharp edges on the prongs, you're gonna put a little cut basically in your wire, and it'll tend to break when you're making leaves. And I made a bunch of these. This one right here seems to work the best. Some of them failed while I was making them. They're not easy to make. But that black foam you see there is just some stuff I got out of a dumpster somewhere, and it's a closed cell heavy duty foam. It was a rectangle before I put it on there, but I drilled a hole through it that was slightly smaller than the bit, and then I used some super glue to make sure that the bit wouldn't spin in there. And it was about an 1.5 inch bit. You can get these at Home Depot anywhere. And then I have an extension here that I like to put on it when I'm making most of my leaves, because it gives me better control. But in real tight spots, I can take that extension off and use it to get that leaf cluster right up to the branch. So that seems to work pretty good for me. So there it is. And the tool that I use to make these are these rotary cutting discs. They're available at Harbor Freight. That's where I got mine, Warrior brand. You can also order them on the internet from Harbor Freight. Let's see if we can get that number to focus. That's item 69657 from Harbor Freight. They're little diamond discs. They are about a 1/2 millimeter in diameter. They're real thin. You don't want to spin them too fast, because if you get them hot, they will warp, and you'll also wear them down quite quickly. So when I'm making these tools, I spin these guys at about 800 RPM. I use a lathe, and I put the I chuck the disc in the lathe, and then I hold the bit, and that works real good for me. But for those of you that don't have a lathe, you could also chuck the bit in a screwdriver, in a drill, and have somebody hold the drill down on a table or something for you. Make it a 2-person job. Or you could actually mount this in a Dremel and mount your bit in a vise and make one. And I could do it that way. It would be a little trickier, but since I have the lathe, I use that. And this one got a little bent because I let it on the floor and then I stepped on it, so it's junk. I'll have to change it. The other thing that really kind of sucks about the tool here when you buy it is the screw that comes with the screw right here that holds the disc onto the mandrel. The screw that they give you is made out of fairly soft metal, so I found another screw in my huge collection of screws that fit the mandrel. And the other thing I like to do, let's see if you can see that. Well, I put a little drop of super glue on there once I get it tightened up. And that there, you can see it on the back. There's that drop of super glue. And when it comes time to change the disc, you can just heat it up with a torch or something and burn that super glue off there and put a new one on the mandrel. And how I do this is I take that number 1 bit, and the first thing I do is I score the bit on both sides so I get a nice straight line to follow, because when you actually start cutting the groove in the bit, it's real easy to go off a little bit either way, and then you got to start over. So I make a, you can probably see that. Sure, you see that little line right at the bottom? That was the line I scored so I wouldn't go crooked. And basically I try and cut my slot as close as I can so that the you know, it is a real thin cut right there. And once I get the depth that I want, boy, this is going to be hard to do. But once I get the depth that I want, then I turn the bit a little bit and I wear away those sharp edges that are on the inside. And then I'd flip it over and do the same thing. Because once again, you want those prongs to be round as possible, because if you leave a sharp edge on there, you're going to cut your wire when you're twisting. And then once I get my slot all set, the way I do it when I'm cutting that, making those final tunings, is I keep checking it on the wire, because it's so important that your bit fit the wire you're using. Now if you see, I just push that on there lightly and it'll stick to the wire. That's almost perfect right there. I don't think I could make a better one than this. And you'll notice that when I wiggle that on there, that bit has just got a little tiny bit of movement. So that makes really nice leaves. It's got to grip the wire just right so that it's not too hard to pull out, but it'll still grip it good. And I suppose I should probably make a couple leaves with it while I'm at it. Oh, and another thing with leaves, your first curl on the leaf, can I get that to focus? You want a nice square cut, because it makes the see, I just got a tiny hill on the end of that wire, but it's actually a pretty square cut. And the way you get that is you take your dikes that you're using. Most dikes are going to have a sharpened edge on both sides, kind of like how you sharpen a knife. But what I did with this one was I ground that side flat, and then I sanded it down so that the actual sharpened edge is only on one side of the dikes. Oh, come on, now focus. Oh, there we go. And you can see that's a sharpened edge, and I do sharpen these every once in a while. And then on the other side, there's almost no sharp edge. So that's how you get that nice clean cut on your wire. And then basically I just put it right on the end, and you have to bear with me. Making these leaves while watching the video camera is a real pain. And the reason I have a tough time doing this for you is because when I'm making my leaves, they're a couple inches away from my face, so that makes it real hard to get a video of them. And once again, it's just the over and under pattern. And it takes a little practice to make good leaves. So if you're starting to make leaves, maybe just use some scrap pieces of wire before you really get the hang of it. And you'll notice that my leaves are kind of wonky there when I'm starting. And a lot of times if I'm working hard and it's warm out, I can just press them flat with my fingers. But usually once I start a cluster of leaves, whoops, I'll just pinch it a little flat first with a pliers once I get going, and then they're nice and flat. And then once again, it's just an over and under pattern. And I don't worry about getting them super perfect right away. because boy, doing this on a video is hard. You can kind of adjust them while you're going on, so usually once I get a few of them, I'll push it in there a little bit. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, that's a good start. Just an over and under pattern. And like I said, another thing, if you want to know how long your wire needs to be at the end of your branch so you get the leaf cluster size you want, I just know from doing this, from making 800 million leaves, I just know now. I don't have to worry about it. But usually I'm going to leave more than 5 inches, and sometimes as much up to a foot if I want a real big leaf cluster. But since you guys might be using different size wire than mine, it's a good idea you measure off like 8 inches of wire and then you twist that up into a cluster and see how it looks. So you do this before you actually start your tree, so you know how much wire you need to have at the end of the longest branch so you can make a cluster of leaves. And me myself, I like to go long because you can always cut the wire shorter, but it's really hard to add more on to the end of it. I suppose you could find a welder who could weld stuff this thin. They're out there, but always go long. You can always cut some off, and let's face it, the aluminum wire is not that expensive. So, and it's easy to recycle the pieces that you cut off, so you're not really wasting it, I guess. But at any rate, I'm going to have some more videos coming up here soon. I'm going to start a rather large tree that's going to have a lot of branch splits very close together on the trunk. And that's a really tricky thing to do and have it look nice. So I guess you can look forward to that video. I'll probably start that tree here in about a week. So I'll have some more videos coming soon. I see the trees, some of you are posting the trees you're making out there online, and you're taking tree making in directions that I probably never will, and I really like seeing that. It's cool to see that people are you know, doing their own thing with the trees, and I see a lot of trees out there I really like. The one thing I would caution some of you about is, especially when you're putting beads and stuff on the trees, be careful, especially if you're using copper wire. If you put too much weight at the end of a branch, your branch will sag over time. And I used to have that problem a long time ago when I made copper trees that were too large. After a couple of years, the branches would kind of sag because they just have too much weight at the end. So that might be something that you might want to play with and maybe test out a little bit before you make trees that have very wide spreading canopies that have a lot of weight on the ends of the branches. And I guess that's all I got for now. Once again, I really like seeing the trees you guys out there are posting. There's a Facebook group, and I'll post a link to it in the video here, where a lot of people are posting. And I bet there's a lot of other groups I don't know about out there. But once again, thanks for watching the videos. Everybody have a great day.